Hi, I'm Apollonia. You may remember me from Purple Rain as leading lady to Prince, or from my band Apollonia 6. I've starred in films, TV shows, and I've been on the cover of magazines all over the world, including Playboy. I was also an LA Rams cheerleader. I'm going to take you with me. Welcome to my podcast, Apollonia Studio 6. Hi, I'm Apollonia Kotero, and welcome to my podcast, Apollonia Studio 6. To my right is my fabulous co-host, Mr. Seth. Mr. Seth, please tell us who's here today. What amazing guest do we have here today?
Our amazing, unbelievable guest today went from DJ to director to internet sensation and influencer. He is famous. He is infamous. His website and podcast, Vlad TV, is one of the biggest on the internet. Let's welcome to Apollonia Studio 6, Vlad Libovny.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Wow, this is just incredible. I can't believe you're here. DJ Vlad in the house.
DJ Vlad in the house.
Man, so how are you feeling today?
I'm good.
Yeah? How's this COVID life treating you? What's going on?
I mean, listen, I'm vaccinated. I got the booster.
Good.
I stay out the way. I stay safe. Good. I've been COVID free so far.
Yeah.
But still live your life.
Yeah.
Good.
What was the first thing you did this morning? Well, second thing.
Second thing this morning, Fridays is sort of like for Vlad TV's, we kind of have to get through the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like a lot of, the clips to kind of go up, not only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday sort of have to be set up. So a lot of times, like my time is set up going through everything that's going to happen through Monday and make sure everything is set up properly and all the titles are there and the videos all look right. And, we get to the weekend okay.
Like a well-oiled machine, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
So I looked you up, and DJ Vlad, as Seth said, director, journalist, and you have the Vlad couch. You are an influencer. Everybody knows all about you. My crew here is very excited that you're here. Like if Megan Fox was here, they wouldn't have been as excited because it's Vlad. No, I'm serious. They were just like jumping off the walls. You were born in the Ukraine.
Yeah. It was the USSR at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I consider myself Russian, even though technically it's a different country now, but at the time it was part of the Soviet Union. So, born in the whole communist thing.
So you get here at 5 years of age, and you head towards, first you're in Massachusetts.
Springfield.
Okay, and you went to school there.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I think I started school there. I think up to second grade because I remember when I moved to California to the Bay Area, I started third grade over there.
Third grade. So so you go straight from the Ukraine to like the Yad and Boston.
Yeah.
How is that for you to? I mean, really understand. Our language. Especially in Boston. I mean, everybody has their ways of speaking in Brooklyn, California.
Yeah, I mean, Russian was my first language. I arrived over there, but I think, I was 5 years old. I picked it up pretty quickly. Like little kids just sort of absorb it. My parents, still had accents kind of like throughout their lives, especially my dad, who was a bit older. But yeah, I just picked it up. So even though English is technically my second language, it kind of became my main language pretty quickly.
I was looking you up. You were first before Vlad the Impaler.
Right.
You got first billing. That's pretty dope.
Yeah, I know. When you Google Vlad, I think I'm one of the first ones to come up. I do it every so often just to see. Where the other Vlads kind of, fall in the universe, according to me.
That's so cool. That is so cool. So now, you're in San Mateo.
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
You start listening to NWA. You go to Berkeley.
Yeah, I mean, it really started way before NWA. It started more like around, in terms of hip hop. It started around fifth grade. When hip hop which obviously started in New York, but kind of became more of an international, first a national, then an international sensation. Yeah. But, we're talking about like the mid 80s is when you started to see kind of hip hop on TV and the first few records started coming out, and there was nothing on the radio. Yeah. Like you had there was like one local radio station at like 11 p.m. that might play like a hip hop hour, but, you basically just go to the warehouse records and just buy a hip hop album hoping it's good, because you can't listen to it. It's not on the radio. It's, you're just hoping it's a cool song. Yeah. And that's kind of where it started, with I was breakdancing at the time when breakdancing sort of became a thing, and some of the first movies started coming out like Breaking and Beat Street. Yeah. I mean, when hip hop sort of became a national thing, when breakdancing started to become, more popular, sort of showing up on television, they started doing movies about it. Like, I think Breaking was the first one and Beat Street was the second one. Like, I really just fell in love with it early on, with the culture and the music and the dancing and the graffiti and the fashion and everything that kind of went with it. And just kind of growing up as an immigrant kid in America with a name like Vlad, right? Where there was like no Russian community where I lived. Like when we moved to San Mateo, I was like the only Russian kid for miles and miles around. Yeah. And it was. It was very much of a outcast kind of situation where the kids really would, really bully me a lot over being Russian and so forth. That I think, it just sort of, the culture of hip hop just kind of made sense to me at that time. And I sort of just kind of fell into it and sort of became like a lifelong kind of thing where, at 48 years old, I'm still doing it full time.
Who were you really into? Like who's the like first artist you were really into?
Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. And, I got to interview Melly Mel recently, and it was like, great. Like this record, really, not White Lines, but what's the name? Broken Glass Everywhere. Don't Push Me. The message. Yeah. Like, we just talked about how like the message was sort of a turning point in hip hop, where before, like Melly Mel would say, rappers would just rap about rapping, being rappers, essentially, where like the message was the first sort of serious song in the genre, and sort of, churned it into a direction where people looked at it as like a legitimate, form of music, where it could have just kind of came and went, or just became like a local New York thing, like let's say Go-Go is local in DC, but doesn't really get out of DC, but it was, that album, I mean, that single, Run DMC's first album was big for me. Yep.
NWA?
NWA came a little bit later. Yeah, a little bit later. But I think like, I think within a couple of years after that, the Beastie Boys album was like, like
Were you watching New York Hot Tracks? Like, you remember New York Hot Tracks?
New York Hot Tracks. I'm trying to remember. I mean, like Yo MTV Raps was a big thing. The original one with Fab Five Freddy. And then like, you had the various other like TV shows. New York Hot Tracks may have been Night Flight. Radio 1990. All the video shows back then where you have the internet to just look up a music video. You just grabbed what you can. And not a lot of hip hop videos out there.
Yeah, that was true. That was true. So how did you transition? Was the transition to DJ kind of an effortless one?
I mean, it originally, like I'm trying to think how it started. Like, I mean, I've always dabbled like musically here and there. Like in what was it, in junior high, I played like the clarinet and saxophone, and I remember when I got to Berkeley, I started making beats. I started producing. And I kind of spent a few years sort of doing that sort of on the side and making little local demos, but there was sort of a realization just started to come after a while that like, I'm never going to be Dr. Dre. I'm never going to be Timberland or DJ Premier or these guys that are really just musically just very, very gifted. So I remember I had a house party and the DJ left his turntables on there. Yeah. So the next morning I just sort of hopped on and just started playing around, and it just sort of came naturally. Yeah. And like the DJ thing was like, oh, okay, I think I could potentially be great in this because it's just so effortless, my first time on it. And that sort of became like kind of like an obsession where I just started focusing on DJing, making mixtapes. I moved to New York in 2002 to kind of take the DJ thing more seriously, where like, okay, I'm going to be in the scene of where it all is and and potentially have a chance to really kind of build my name up. And things sort of worked out their way over a certain number of years in that direction.
Yeah. Okay.
Was it Gigastaff?
Gigastaff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now before
Computer programmer.
Yeah.
Degree.
I majored when I went to UC Berkeley. I majored in computer science, and when I graduated, that was like the heart. I graduated in '96, so the .com thing was really like in effect at that point. I spent maybe like 2 years programming, realized it wasn't really my thing. So and then around '97, I think I started my own company called Gigastaff, which was a staffing company where I was helping people find jobs. And this was like my first taste of like being an entrepreneur, where I had like an office, I had employees. I mean, how old was I at the time? Maybe like 25 or something.
That's very young.
Yeah. And it was all like, all this money was coming in. I bought a house, I bought a Benz, like, all that type of stuff. Yeah. And then the .com crash happened. And I think 2001 was just wiped out our company completely. And it was sort of like this kind of point in my life where I'm like, all right, do I go back and get a job? Do I struggle with a company that really there's no market for right now? Or do I kind of pursue DJing and music because I'm kind of getting to this age where I'm not going to have a choice like this too much longer. Yeah. I'm about to be too old to be a new DJ. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like you could be an established OG DJ in their 30s or 40s, but you can't be starting out when you're 40. Yeah. Like it's a little silly. Yeah. So I was like, all right, let me really, roll the dice and kind of take it seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your big break? So so what was your big break in music?
Right. So I'm in New York, so maybe around 2003, and I'm putting out, I'm doing the whole mixtape thing, and it's a very sort of underground market where it's not really legal per se. Yeah. You're not really licensing this music. You're kind of putting these compilations together and selling them on the street or to mom and pop stores and so forth.
That's how it was back then, though,
Yeah. And I came up with this idea to do this Biggie mixtape called Rap Phenomenon, where I hooked up with this guy named Dirty Harry, who DJ'd for like Alicia Keys and Nas, and he had all these vocals from Biggie. And back then that was sort of like no one had this stuff. So we like took all these Biggie vocals and put them on, remixed it and put it on different beats and everything. And then we put that out, and that sort of became kind of a big thing at the time. Like MTV did a whole feature on it, and it was like, oh shit, like I'm on MTV, and and now it was one of these projects that sort of went everywhere. And then like we did a part 2, which was a Tupac mixtape, and then we brought in this guy DJ Green Lantern, who was Eminem's DJ at the time, and we kind of did the same thing. We got all these Tupac vocals and getting them by various ways, and then this time we actually brought in a bunch of artists to sort of kind of do these songs with Tupac. After the fact, where like Busta Rhymes, Alicia Keys sang something, Bounty Killer, Bun B, Exhibit, Jadakiss. It was just a bunch of artists. Wyclef, I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch of people right now, but it was this really cool project that got even bigger and won like Mixtape of the Year at the Mixtape Awards. Back when they still had it. And it was like, all right, now like the DJ Vlad name is sort of known in some of the hip hop circles. And it was like, all right, like I have a few different options of what I could do. Yeah. What I'm saying, with my career, and it brought in like more shows and overseas and more, kind of more interest in some of my other projects and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, that was critically acclaimed.
It was, it won some awards. It was kind of cool.
How did you feel, that kid from the Ukraine coming out here and you're in a different world and having fun making your beats, and now you're being rewarded. You're a public person.
I mean, it felt great. It was like, because you don't know when you sort of get into this where if you ever sort of cross that threshold of like, hobby to career. You know what I mean? Like everyone, a lot of people dabble in the arts. Right. And it's just that. It's just a dabble that doesn't get past their, their bedrooms or maybe their small group of friends. Right. And it was like, all right, like I really want to do this seriously. And, in the process of doing it, I had to be very conscious of like, I can't have a 9-to-5 job during this time. Like I really have to do this full time because I can't compete. Someone with a 9-to-5 job can't compete with someone who's just doing it day and night.
Yeah.
Not only the working on the projects, but going out to the events, the networking, going to the labels, going to the media outlets, just, talking to people, like forming relationships and so forth. So it was like, I was just kind of all in. It was like, either I'm going to do it or I can go back to my previous life, into tech.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. It was like, like I actually got to a point, and then it was like, all right, like once I got to that point, it's like, okay, this is cool. And there's a little bit of local notoriety, but there's really not very much money in it. And I'm still kind of struggling financially. And, I'm starting to get older, and like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
As I progress, because this mixtape thing is, sort of in a decline because CDs are going away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're following all those changes. I mean, from CDs to streaming and
Streaming wasn't out then.
right
There was no streaming. There was MP3 files here and there.
Yeah.
to now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during this time, I mean, you've established a lot of great relationships with your music, with the recording.
So how did is that when you made decided to make the transition is that where the seed of Vlad TV was kind of born?
Well, it was a sort of kind of chance. No, it was sort of like this chance meeting where my man Hip Hop, who's the brother of Biggs from Rockefeller, he introduced me to QD3, who is Quincy Jones' son.
Yeah.
And he was working on the Beef DVD series, and they were looking for ways to promote it. And QD3 was sort of a fan of the mixtapes. Him being like a hip hop guy. So we did this. We decided to do this project where I did this mixtape to promote the DVD. And in the process of doing that, I would hang out with QD3 in his studio, and he was doing documentaries, and I was just like, so I started just picking his brain, and I'm like, oh, how does this work? You got to pay everyone a documentary, do you have to license this? And it's like, oh no, people a lot of times will do the interviews for free, and as long as you don't use the music, you could actually. And I'm like, oh, it's kind of like a mixtape. Like, all right, like I think I can maybe do this. So
Yeah.
I was sort of hanging out with the Games people at the time. So we kind of came up with this idea to do a DVD around the Games, first album.
Okay.
And that was when I just picked up this old, mini DV camera,
Okay.
that I just had around my apartment, and was like, oh, let's just film him and let's put it together as a DVD with a mixtape. And that was sort of my first foray into the video world. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's kind of similar to mixtapes or music production or whatever. It's just there's an extra visual element outside with the audio element.
Yeah.
You're still kind of cutting and pasting and putting the stuff together.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then, at that time there was like this kind of street DVD movement.
Yeah.
Like, Smack was probably the most popular one, with doing like these MC battles outside and so forth that he was filming. So I kind of jumped into that a little bit. And I started putting out my own DVDs where I would start interviewing people, put a few, music videos out, and kind of just do some other sort of creative type stuff. But at the same time, DVDs were starting to go away, just like how CDs were going away. And it was like, once again, I'm kind of in this back in this kind of cycle of like, gotta put out more projects. My money's getting tighter, and this stuff is a little bit more legal, but not completely legal, but a little more legal.
Yeah.
And then right around 2008, that's when YouTube, that had already been around for a few years, introduced their partner program, which was their program that where you can monetize the views on your videos. And it was just like, oh, like this is it. This is what I've been waiting for all these years.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, let me take everything I've been doing and focus on this. Like I've been doing what I'm doing, and people liked it, but it was just not on a big platform. It was just independently, distributed DVDs. Now I actually have an internet platform, and other media outlets could sort of embed the videos, and that's the way these videos will spread. And I'm like, oh, like I just saw the vision of it all. I'm like, this is going to be the biggest video platform in the world is just going to take a few years. So let me stop DJing, stop doing mixtapes, stop doing DVDs, stop, whatever other hustle I had on the side, and just put all my focus on this, because I think in a number of years it's gonna this will actually be where my career heads. And luckily I was right. In this particular sense. That's the thing in business. You only have to get it right once.
Yeah.
You can keep getting it wrong over and over again. And then you get it right once. And I was like, oh, he's a genius. How did he? It's like, nah, it's like I just kept getting it wrong for 10 years. So I finally got one good decision along the way. But let's focus on all the shit I messed up. And you might not think the same way.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
But that's great. What a learning lesson.
Yeah.
I mean, just, for us, for this podcast, just to keep striving, and all that knowledge, all that practice, all that work then enabled you to direct American Gangster
on
BET. Tell us about that.
Right when I was starting Vlad TV, that's when I I'm trying to think of the timing of this. Right around the same time, it was like, okay, I'm doing these street DVDs, but I want to do bigger projects. So the first project was called Ghost Ride the Whip. It was a documentary about the hyphy movement coming out of the Bay, which, with people like Mac Dre and Keek the Sneak and so forth. It was kind of really popular at the time. And me being from the Bay, it was like, oh, this is kind of a cool project that I could help put together, that I could direct, with relationships I already have. So, it was sort of the whole QD3 connection. This guy, Peter Spire, who's the director for QD3, I reached out to him. I pitched him the project. First, he didn't, he passed on it. Then I kind of created like a 20-minute or 30-minute cut myself. When he saw it, he was like, oh, okay. Oh, I see the vision of it. So we got a deal with Image Entertainment to do essentially my first documentary, which I directed and he produced. So we spent, as I'm launching Vlad TV, I'm working on Ghost Ride the Whip. And then right around the same time, based on Ghost Ride the Whip, the story in Ghost Ride the Whip was a lot of it was about Mac Dre. And American Gangster was a really popular series on BET at the time. Yeah. And the Mac Dre story kind of overlaps with his crew called the Romper Room Gang, which were kind of like notorious bank robbers coming out of Vallejo who robbed like 50 banks or something like that. So by using, the Ghost Ride the Whip documentary as sort of a rough draft, I sent it, I had a contact over at American Gangster. We sent it over to them and say, hey, what do you think about this, about an episode? And they loved it. So we got like a bigger budget. It was like a $250,000 budget to actually film an episode of American Gangster about the Mac Dre story.
Okay.
And that was like kind of like probably one of my the works that I think I'm probably most proud of. Yeah. Just because we had the big budget, the big cameras and the sound guys and the high-end editing, and it was like it came together really dope, and it was on BET and so forth. But what I was learning from these projects as I was doing them, between Ghost Ride the Whip and American Gangster, was you get a little bit of money up front and then you just never see anything ever on the back end. Right. And I was like, this just doesn't really work for me. Like it's number one, it's not enough money up front compared to the amount of, you're working on this thing for months. Yeah. And it's just like, you never see another penny. And that was really motivated me more to kind of go harder with the Vlad TV thing, because that was content that I actually owned outright. Correct. In perpetuity. Yeah. So it was like, all right, well, let me focus on my shit and really get my stuff as good as possible, and not really, stop focusing on these outside deals and trying to get, these documentary deals with these bigger companies. They're going to ultimately just own it outright and pay you a few pennies and go on to the next person. And you did all the work. Like I've never seen a royalty. I did one more documentary after that. It was about Corinne Steffens. Yeah. AKA Superhead. Yeah. And once again, same story. I produced that. A lot of the footage was based on my interview footage, that I came together with, and then, got a check, never saw another penny. Yeah. It'd be on Showtime for like 2 months. Yep. Never saw another penny. Yeah. Ghost Ride the Whip be on Netflix for a year. Never saw a penny. So it was just like, all right, let me motivate to work on my company, because dealing with these companies, I mean, do I deserve royalties? Do I not? I don't know. But to even go through the process of trying to figure it out is it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just kind of kept it moving after that.
I get it.
Damn.
I get it.
Got to go where the money's at.
Yeah. Well, you got to make your own money.
Yeah.
You got to create your own stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember who your first celebrity interview was on, Vlad?
Well, I mean, I was doing interviews before Vlad TV.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of that time was overlapping.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of some of my first interviews that we posted on Vlad TV, because the first things were like the Ghost Ride the Whip, like kind of promo videos. But I mean, Plies was an early interview. Mano was an early interview. You know, like people like that. But it was starting to kind of, you know, YouTube was brand new. No one really even knew about it. And, you know, I was kind of known in some of the hip hop circles. So it was like, people weren't even sure what I was filming for. But
what year did Vlad TV officially get started?
2008.
Okay, so it's been on for a while.
14 years. Yeah.
Was there ever a celebrity that you interviewed and then you thought during or after, okay, this was just a bad idea?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've scrapped interviews before.
Really?
Yeah, every so often. Yeah, I mean, we had one guy that was just a complete fraud.
Okay.
You know, who claimed he was like the former president of Murder Inc. He claimed he was in the car when 50 Cent got shot, and he had done other interviews about this. And I didn't do the interview myself; it was done with one of my outside interviewers. But then it was like, remember, like 50 Cent went on Instagram and just said, it showed a snapshot of the interview, just said fraud. And then I remember when I called Ja Rule, and I'm like, did this guy used to be President Murder Inc? He was like, I have no idea what this guy is. And I'm like, shit. Damn it. Let me delete it real quick, delete everything real quick, pretend this never happened. And, you know, I mean, like, we got it wrong. We got it wrong, and we, you know, we deleted it, you know, as soon as I found out. It only been out for like a day or two. And, you just felt like, okay, you know, it wasn't necessarily my interview, but we should have done more due diligence ahead of time to really make sure that this is the guy who he said he was, but we weren't going to stand behind it once we found out it wasn't.
Right.
But I mean, occasionally you get into these interviews where you're just like, you know, the person don't really want to be there, so you don't really want to be there. Like, you know, my interview with Lil Wayne, I had one interview with Lil Wayne like before Vlad TV where he just like one word answers, looked like he was still high off something, and it was just like, all right, let me just muscle through this and put it out and keep it moving.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. It's like, what happens if someone comes in intoxicated and, you know, they're, what do you do? You know?
I mean, the show must go on. You know, everyone's there. There's camera people there. There is, you know, locations. There is coordination. You know,
and the vomitorium, right? In case he gets sick.
Yeah, you know, and you know, you're there to do a job. You do it to the best of your ability, and then, you know, afterwards you sit back and you figure out what you're going to do with it. You know, sometimes you put it out. Sometimes you say, I didn't really like the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna scrap it, which happens every so often. Not too often, but every so often.
Yeah.
It's got to be tough.
Did you ever, because I know, you know, you have interviewed all sorts of people in the music business. You've interviewed people in the entertainment business, and just period. Did you ever like set up an interview or anything like that, and you got there, or they got to you, and you just felt, okay, you felt really uneasy and just felt like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this? And you don't have to name the person or the interview, but have you ever felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have, maybe this wasn't a good idea?
No, I mean, I've had a few people get mad at me in the course of an interview. You know, I remember, who was it? I remember I interviewed this guy, Ugly God, you know, who at one point just sort of walked out. He just got kind of frustrated with some of the questions and was just sort of stormed out. And then later on, you know, called me and apologized about it. You know, so that happens every so often where like, you know, I mean, you're dealing with humans. You know, you're dealing, you know, I mean, I forgot what the guy's name is, but I remember he was turning himself in to do like 20 years or something, like soon after the interview. And I remember I'd asked him about something. He got kind of upset and stood up and just started kind of yelling. I forgot his name, or else I would just mention it. But like, you know, things sometimes go left. But, you know, I'm not, you know, my style has always, I'm not trying to capture like the walkout moment. A lot of times when those walkouts are kind of, people acting out happens, we usually just cut that out of the footage and just not put it out at all.
Yeah.
So, I'm not trying to be viral for someone storming out of the interview because that's not really what we want to be known for. We want to be known as a place where people come in and it's a comfortable place. So I try to, with interviewing, I mean, now I've been doing it for, I don't know, 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a craft more so than, something you can go to school for. Like you kind of just have to do it over and over again and figure out how to, because you could ask anyone anything.
Right.
Just have to figure out how to ease into that question, and when to ask that question. You come in and ask a bunch, it's the first thing you ask is all this, questions about trauma or really serious situations. The person will just clam up and not want to talk at all or just be uncomfortable or maybe even leave. It's kind of like you want to get the person comfortable and kind of check their temperature to see where you could go with the line of questioning.
Right.
And, I kind of feel like the art of it all is to try to ask, figure out how to ask the most uncomfortable question that everyone wants to know the answer to without upsetting the person and getting the person to actually answer it.
Right.
And that's not always easy. It's kind of like a puzzle piece in a way.
It's like you're a therapist.
Yeah,
it's
in a
like
way.
Psychologist.
Yeah, in a way. I approach my interviews in that type of manner sometimes. So it's like, between all the research that's done before the interview and then actually like, the cameras are on go and you only have one chance to do this right. You can't really like tell the person to come back and redo the interview. So you got to get it right that one time. That's sort of where the pressure and the art, I feel like, kind of comes in to try to create this story out of thin air with this person who you don't know. Yeah. And you're usually meeting for the first time.
Correct.
And you're creating this product that millions of people will watch. And that's where the pressure of it all comes together, to finally put it out and someone say like, wow, that was a great story. I'm glad I gave up a few hours of my life to watch that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Wow.
Definitely.
So, man, so many great answers. This note to self, I am learning from Vlad, the legend. So now, tell me a little bit about culture vulture. What does that mean?
Yeah, I get the
DJ Vulture?
DJ Vulture.
What is that?
I don't know. Probably some nicknames someone came up with.
I have nicknames too.
Yeah, culture vulture is, I guess, a term that popped up a few years back. I guess someone who people feel take from hip hop and don't give back or aren't really part of the culture and just try to, milk it or, basically be a vulture and, eat off the carcass of it and so forth. Obviously there's a racial element to it, being white in a predominantly black art form. You're going to get that, whether it's me or, Steve Rifkin, who started Loud Records and, signed Wu-Tang.
I've gotten it.
Yeah. Or Leor Cohen, who used to be the president of Def Jam and, started 300 and, I think the head of YouTube music now, like Joey IE. Like the list goes on and on about white guys who are called culture vultures in the art form.
I never heard that.
Yeah, I think anyone who knows my background and knows my story of, in terms of my involvement with hip hop since elementary school, would probably change their mind a little bit. But then again, it just is what it is. It comes with the territory. Right. I don't take it too seriously.
Yeah. Well, I have to disagree, that people have said that to you because I want to, touch on my interview in a little bit near the end because you made me feel so comfortable. And it was just like a super classy interview.
Thank you. And it's still like that interview, like the full interview, because we release it with clips in the beginning, but the full interview, and I've been checking, is still like a trending top interview on our YouTube channel. Like it's still getting I don't know, 30,000, 40,000 views a day. consistently.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Thanks for watching.
People are still watching. So I mean, I assume that people have been reaching out and kind of.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, because I mean, I know when an interview does well and when it doesn't. I think like this one in particular. You know, a lot of times when I interview, you know, because we're really kind of at our core a hip hop channel. So when I interview people outside of hip hop, I have to let sort of YouTube do its job and let like their fans or the fans of someone associated with them, like a Prince, sort of find that interview later on. So initially it may not do massive numbers, but you know, as the Apollonia fans and the Prince fans and the Rick James fans and all the other topics that, you know, the Dave Chappelle fans or whoever else like finally finds it, that's when it starts to kind of take off over time, and over time millions of people watch it.
Since we're on it, I did the interview and you made me feel comfortable. There was this transparency. And I know we were talking about it before we got started on this show. And I remember thinking, as an actor, you do your scene, you hit your marks, and, you know, they yell, cut. And then you forget what you did.
Yeah.
You know, your director's like, was in the moment. And I felt that with you because of the way that you were so kind and the questions, you did your research. You asked about my family, and it was just like, and that's the very first time that I really opened up in an interview. I'm going to get choked up again. Talked about, you know, Prince, almost losing myself in that process. My mother was dying when Prince, you know, transitioned, and then I couldn't tell her. So all these questions that you had, I was so open, you know, for the first time in many years. I learned from Prince to be mysterious, not to give interviews. I was the one that went out.
He never did interviews, right?
Well, he did a few.
No, yeah, you're right. I saw. Yeah, I think I remember later on. I think he did a few, but very few.
For like 84, he had me going out doing all of his interviews, you know, so which was wonderful for me because he trusted that I knew how to, you know, drop his pearls of wisdom for his purple public. But thank you again for having me on your show. It was enlightening. I learned so much about myself, you know, that it's time for me to speak about my life and Prince and my family. And it was you that enabled me to do that. You kind of like, you just took me by the hand that day. And Seth, you were there. And thank you so much. Thank you.
It was an honor. It was an honor. I think it's a very important story.
And while we're at it, you interviewed Morris Day, my brother.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
I mean, I was a big fan.
Yeah.
You know, Jungle Love had been my jam like forever. You know, and just this whole kind of like persona with like the mirror, and, you know, the suits and, you know, the hair and everything else like that. And he just kind of came solo. I think originally we had it planned this one date, and then he got like really, really sick. This is like pre-COVID, I believe. He got really, really sick, but then, you know, we rescheduled, and we came in, and, you know, just a very dope story. And I feel like Morris didn't really hold back. You know, I mean, he called Prince cheap. You know, he talked about the money problems. Yeah. He talked about how him and Prince stopped rocking with each other, and you know how he didn't really. You know, when Prince got more religious, he wasn't really, you know, he didn't want to go along on that journey. And, you know, it was like, you know, a lot of times when someone passes away, a lot of people feel like, you know, all their imperfections just are gone and they're this perfect human being. Yeah. And, you know, and that's just not reality. Yeah. You know, so it's nice to really speak to someone who really keeps it 100 and, you know, talks about someone, you know, their good side and their bad side. Yeah. You know, just like we all have. Yeah. But that was a great interview. I'm glad he came in and did that.
Mr. Morris Day.
What was an interview that you did, and as you were doing it, you said to yourself, "This is gold"?
Let me think. Your interview was great, obviously. That Apollonia interview was great.
I'm teasing, yeah.
You know, I think that when I interviewed Fab Morvan from Milli Vanilli, that was a very big one for me because it's always like for me at 48, it's always cool to interview people that I was fans of before any industry thing.
Right.
Where it was just purely a love of the music, unadulterated. I had, I never had plans to start a media company or whatever else. I just figured I was going to be a fan my whole life.
Right.
So, me and the rest of the world were fans of Milli Vanilli.
Yeah.
Like Girl You Know It's True was, Blame It on the Rain were like the biggest songs of the year.
Yeah.
They won all the they won the Best New Artist Grammy, which, for those that don't know, was considered, there's like 4 big Grammys. I think they won like Song of the Year and Brand New Artist. Like it was like these big, they cleaned up at the Grammys. Then they had to give the Grammys back.
Give them all back.
and in the process of, so it was very, as someone that just saw it from the outside and saw this whole train wreck happening.
Yeah.
And I remember in the interview, I even mentioned how there was this MTV thing that I saw where after the interview, they were like, we're Milli Vanilli, shout out to MTV. And they couldn't speak English a lick.
Yeah.
Like their accents were so thick that I was like, how are these guys singing this stuff? Like these guys can't even speak English. Which was true at the time. They were singing this stuff. And to just sort of hear the whole story of it all, of like how they got caught up into agreeing to lip sync. And how quickly it happened, and how the guy who did it had a history of this type of thing. Like the producer who put it together, he had this other really huge hit where he actually did the vocals, but it had a black vocalist actually perform the song. I forgot who it was. I could look it up real quick. But anyways, it was like this guy did it once, and he's like, okay, I'm going to redo it again. Get these 2 good-looking guys. Have a bunch of middle-aged guys singing the vocals. We'll put them out. It'll be a hit. Boom. And and how they got caught up into it, and then kind of how it got exposed, and then sort of the massive embarrassment and the fallout from this, and how his group mate ended up getting on drugs really heavily, and how ultimately he checked himself into rehab, but I guess went on a big drug binge right before he checked in and died. And and just the whole story of it all was, I feel like this is one of these stories, because no one's ever had to give back a Grammy before or after that.
That's right.
This was a very strange situation. Although there's been lots of people lip syncing. In the past, and even today, there's so much. You could do so much with Pro Tools that you could take the world's worst singer and have them sound relatively decent.
Make them great. I remember when they did the same thing with CNC Music Factory and Black Box.
Martha Washington.
They did the same thing with Martha Wash.
And she sued, and I think that her lawsuit actually changed the laws.
Changed
where now you had to actually put the right people in the credits.
Right.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was a time of like, pulling back the curtains and like, okay, this is really what's happening. But so now, not that anything really changed, because I think it still sort of happens to a certain degree. But it was a very interesting story to see it happen for the first time, and really get a firsthand account,
get the real
of the whole thing,
full story. Were you ever interviewing anyone, a celebrity, and got a confession in an interview that just kind of left you speechless? Like somebody said something you were like, shit.
When I interviewed Keefy D, who was in the car that killed Tupac, going into that whole story was like, because I kind of felt like with that interview, I sort of solved the case of, because not only when we released it, not only did that interview come out with him, but as he's talking, we're cross-referencing, I had dozens and dozens of interviews about the Tupac incident, from, Edie, from the Outlaws that was in the car right behind to, the first responder cop that showed up, Chris Carroll, to, the police investigator that ultimately that took over the case later on, that all the stories that he was saying was all fitting together with all the other people that were there telling the same story, that because it's still an unsolved case, it's still an open murder, so there is always the the government killed Tupac, or
Right.
Suge Knight killed Tupac, had him killed, or
Conspiracy
Biggie
theories,
killed
right?
Tupac,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Where it was like, all right, like this case will go down unsolved, but here's a firsthand account of the last living member in that car, because the three other people in the car are now dead. Who's an older man that will not get a chance, telling the story for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's like, with Tupac still being, one of the biggest artists in the world, 20-something years after his passing, I think it really sort of finishes the story in a way and brings a certain level of closure to it. And I was like, this is going to be important when it comes out.
Yeah. Wow.
That's heavy, huh?
Is there a celebrity out now that you haven't had a chance to interview that you'd love to interview?
Tons of them. We still
Give me your
do.
top two.
Me and Kanye have never done like a proper interview. I interviewed him a long time ago before Vlad TV, back when I was doing mixtapes, and I ended up losing the interview over the years. Me and Eminem have never done an interview. We've never even been in the same room.
Okay.
We've been in the same room once, but we never actually met. Obama, that'd be a great interview. I've never done that one.
Right?
Whoa.
Steve Jobs would be an interesting one. Or not Steve Jobs.
Elon?
Microsoft, Bill Gates. Sorry.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, Bill Gates would be a great one. Elon Musk would be a great one.
Yeah.
You never got a chance to interview him.
Yeah.
So these are sort of like, people that are on the radar that at some point might come together, might not.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's great, though. He's ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big picture.
Yeah.
All righty. So with all of this fame and notoriety, how does that make you feel? Especially knowing that this is one of my favorites, that you're on the Boondocks on Adult Swim.
Yeah. I was a character on. Well, I was
That is so cool.
myself on the Boondocks. I was dope.
So, fame and notoriety.
Yeah, the Boondocks thing was dope. Shout out to man Carl Jones, who was like one of the main producers, one of the main artists on that show, and did a lot of the voices.
I love that.
Yeah, it was cool because I was actually played myself on the show,
great.
and it came from sort of like a random conversation me and him had. And it was like, 'cause the scene was already shot with sort of like this kind of character DJ. And I'm like, you should get me on the show. And he's like, wait a minute, there's a scene that I think you'd be perfect for. So I came in and I did the reading, and they ended up using it. But in terms of, to answer your question, I really am not, like, I try to keep myself as separated from the fame as I can, which is why I keep myself off camera.
Yeah.
And like, people know my voice more so than my face.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are like, see me for the first time, when they see me do an interview or see me in a picture or something like that. Because it's just like, I'm not a big fan of the fame for fame's sake.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if I need it to accomplish something, then cool.
Yeah.
But in general, I prefer to just have my own personal life and to be more just incognito and to be able to just go, like I like going to grocery stores and just shopping by myself without having to take pictures with everyone or have security with me everywhere I go.
Right.
Or, and if I ever want to feel famous, I could go to any hip hop event and the whole place will know who I am. And there's a lot of people taking pictures with me and telling me, how much they like the show or whatever else.
Yeah.
And that's cool. So if that's something that I need to make myself feel better, then I could do that. But in general, I kind of like to stay more, I guess, normal,
Right.
and less famous. Because if I wanted to be more famous, all I got to do is just put myself in front of the camera.
Right. Exactly.
It's easy. It's a split-second decision that could transform my whole life within a couple months. But it's just not really what I'm into.
Got you.
You give your audience advice on investments.
Well, not really. I don't give them advice.
A little bit.
You
Well,
can see what
you talk about it a little,
I talk about my own experience, and if they want to,
But that's
take
great advice,
pieces
though,
from it.
because we're all listening. And your thoughts on, now cryptocurrency, NFTs, and all
Yeah.
that fun stuff. What do you think about all that?
I mean, I don't own any crypto or NFTs myself. There's been talks about turning some of my content into NFTs.
You are an NFT, baby.
Yeah. I interviewed this girl named People Pleaser who
love
is
that name.
her
love
group,
it.
Pleaser DAO, owns some of the most expensive NFTs in the world, like the Dogecoin meme, or like what else do they own? They own who's the guy? Edward Snowden's NFT and a few other.
Really?
Yeah, Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, the Wu-Tang One of One album, and so forth.
Wow.
So I'm familiar with what it all is, but for me, maybe about 11 years ago, I really went, once the business started to take off, I really went just all into stock investing. And, because I had just messed up my money so many times over the years of following, fear of missing out, following some trend, or having a friend, you give them some money to invest, and they lose it all, or they run off with your money, and, because you're trying to flip and double your money and so forth. And I always told myself, when I start to make real money again, I'm going to really take my investment into my own hands and not depend on anyone else to tell me what to do, to read my own books, to do my own research, and to really make my own decisions with it. So I started doing that then, and it sort of became kind of like the basis of my financial life. So once crypto and NFTs and everything came out, I'm aware of it, and I'm talking to, like this, this girl, like her group is a multi-billion-dollar group at this point, with I think they just raised $100 million in capital. But, so I'm fully aware of it, but I also feel like, I'm not the type of person to really kind of chase the next big thing or try to really quickly flip, and double or triple my money. Like what I have done over the years has worked for me, and I understand my investment style. And I always notice that when I go outside of that, when I try to chase whatever's hot, I usually end up either losing or breaking even. So I'm just kind of sticking with my own kind of thing, and we'll see where it heads. Maybe at some point I will invest, but right now, not so much. I don't own any crypto. I don't own any NFTs.
So we have a ritual that we have on this show.
Okay.
I hit people with what I call my Big 10 questions here.
Okay.
Tell me one thing that most people don't know about you.
I guess that I have a really just a silly personality, in terms of who I really am.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just know me from doing interviews, so they kind of get that snapshot of my conversation.
Yeah.
But in real life, I'm really kind of silly, funny type person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've always, the reason why I interview so many stand-ups, because I'm such a fan of it, and I think I'm like a closet stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Nice.
In my personal life, even though I'll never actually get on stage and do it. But I think that's the thing where people don't really know my personality, and that's sort of I think the core of my personality.
Okay.
Just being silly, funny, and
So
laughing.
he's going to do the worm for us as he leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know you know your moves. I know you bust moves.
I have breakdance in a while.
See, we're going to have to take him out dancing.
Might hurt myself.
What's the best part about being DJ Vlad?
I think that sort of realizing that what I'm creating on a daily basis is going to live past my lifetime. That I'm documenting important historical stories that will go on and sometimes be the basis for certain people that never get a big budget documentary or anything. For example, when I interviewed John Witherspoon, who passed away a few years ago, we did, I think, either his last or second to last interview, but we did his only interview where he told his life story from where he grew up to how he made it in comedy, and, sort of important parts about his most iconic movies like Friday or Boomerang and so forth. And it's you got all these people that are going to be fans of John Witherspoon for years, who are going to discover Friday. There's someone who's watching Friday for the first time today.
Yeah.
Right now. They're watching Friday and they're going, wow, this is the best movie ever.
Yeah.
who's this John Witherspoon guy?
Yeah.
I want to know a story. And there's really only one place that you can find it, which is, on Vlad TV, on our YouTube channel. And that's sort of like, to me, is like, we're really leaving important pieces of information on this earth, which will be around past my lifetime. Kids are going to write school reports and use this as a basis of their school reports. People are going to discover certain people in the past who aren't around anymore, who or maybe are still around, but are older. And this is a snapshot into their life at a certain age, because, you're only going to be that age that day. Yeah. And we're capturing, your image and your thoughts and your vocals on that particular day for the future. Yeah. And that's important. Yeah. That to me, I think, is the coolest part. Yeah.
Wow. Profound.
What can be, or what is the most challenging part about being DJ Vlad?
I think that, and this always sort of weighs on me every day, is that a lot of the main research is sort of done that day, that morning. I'm a bit of a procrastinator, and it's just like, you see you have an interview with someone on your calendar, and you know that there's a lot of resources put into this interview. Not only the production costs, but appearance fees and your own time. Yeah. And the people that that work on the research, and my own time, and my employees' time, and so forth. And you're like, okay, like you only get one chance to do it. And you have to have all your ducks in a row, and you have to do all your research. You don't want to like do the interview and then the next day you see some piece of information that you just missed completely. Damn, I should have asked that. So it's just like, because the goal is that whenever someone sits down in that chair, that this is, the goal is this is going to be their biggest interview ever in their life. Yeah. Like that's how I go into it. Like, this is, I don't care what you did. I don't care if you were on 60 Minutes. I don't care if you were on Jimmy Kimmel. I don't care if you're on The Breakfast Club. Yeah. This is going to be your biggest interview because we are going to create this story with you that's going to be better than anything you've done before. Yeah. And people are going to gravitate towards this and over time, look at this. So it's just like a lot of like, got to get this right, know, and a lot of it is based on the research because we don't, I remember when I was in the UK and I interviewed Tim Westwood, who's been doing it longer than I have. And we talked about our styles of interview, and he's like, he never researches. His thing is like, he just likes to vibe and shoot out shoot from the hip and kind of just get a flow for that particular person that day. And I'm like the total opposite, and he's done great doing what he does. So, it's just different. But for me, it's like, we the research is what sets it apart. Mm-hmm. And even when I'm not doing the interview myself, I have a group of people that do interviews on Vlad TV. We still provide the questions and we still do all the research, that they follow that blueprint. So it's kind of like, it's a lot of pressure to get it right. Yeah. Because, like I said earlier in this interview, you can't really get the person to come back. Right. You're done. As soon as that camera shuts off, you have what you have to work with, and you got to hope that your audience likes it. Yeah. So that's the hardest part, I think.
If you could interview one person, living or dead, who would it be? And what would be the one question that you would want to ask them?
I mean, if you say living or dead, probably Tupac. Okay. I mean, I think doing a Tupac interview would be would be the one I would pick. And I guess if I could, ask one question, I guess from everything that I've heard after the fact with other people I've interviewed, it seemed like Tupac and Biggie, had a very close friendship at one point. Mm-hmm. And, it seems like had they both lived, that would have been reestablished. Mm-hmm. We just had an interview we did with Lil C's. Mm-hmm. Sean Prez did it on our behalf, who was part of Bad Boy. And C's went into like how Pac would go to Biggie's block and they would all hang out and smoke weed and, they would all talk together and there was a real friendship. Yeah. And had they both survived and, gotten over this, they would have probably become friends again. And I think that if I had a chance with what I know today and how I conduct myself, if I had a chance to really talk to him and sort of dig into that relationship with him and Biggie, it could have potentially, gotten them back together. Like, for example, just recently, I remember we actually posted this morning, Howard Hewitt from Shalimar did an interview on Vlad TV. Sean Prez, once again, did the interview. And in the interview, we talked about Jody Watley leaving the group. And there was a fight that happened at the end where she claimed that Howard told her, during the argument, you'll never be shit without Shalimar. Right? And they never spoke again after that day. For 40 years. She has been offered, there was people that are offering big dollar amounts for a Shalimar reunion with her, and she would turn it down every time, right? They've never performed together. And just this morning, we had posted a video from Howard Hewitt, who, following this interview and how big that part of the interview got, he did this whole formal apology to Jody Watley. First time in 40 years. Because even in the interview, he was like, well, she said I said that. I don't remember saying that. And, all she could say is, look, motherfucker, you were wrong. I blew up as a solo artist. But he never apologized. So it was like he apologized on video because of how big the Vlad TV interview got. And you got to think, this is 40 years. It's not like this is the first time he's been asked that question.
Right.
It's probably been addressed before in various ways. But the fact that on our platform, with the way we presented it, with how big it got, the feedback that he was getting, triggered him to say, hey, it's time for me to publicly apologize to this woman. And, who knows what's going to happen next? But it's like, if you sit back and let's just say in the near future, Jody accepts his apology and then they go and do a Shalimar show together. Right. And it's like, we played a part in that. This is kind of like
front row seats.
That's the catalyst.
Can you imagine?
Something that is like, and this is what we kind of set out to do in the beginning, is like to be on a caliber of a 60 Minutes where what we do has far-reaching effects. It's not just here's an interview and our audience checks it out and then they go on to the next one. It's like, okay, this sets off shockwaves in the world where other things happen and hopefully positive things happen in the process. Yeah. And, I think the Howard Hewitt thing is an example of it. And, and I think, if I had a chance to interview Tupac, maybe the line of questioning would have had him sort of rethink the whole situation. Say, something, maybe, that is my homeboy, something, he didn't have anything to do with my shooting. Like I'm just tripping and I'm, maybe certain people are in my ear and, I need to, because imagine had they both lived, done a joint album together, grown older, Tupac could have had kids and, potentially been, dabbled into politics and so forth. Like, it's, you never know. So the long answer to a short question.
Great answer.
What's the craziest rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
I mean, people think I'm the feds. I get that to this day. They think I'm secretly working with the police. I've been accused of our interview. Like, I remember there was a rumor, we were trending for 2 days because there was a fake article where, they claimed his judge thanked Vlad TV for helping convict this one rapper, that we interviewed, Arab, which was not true. Every so often, we just get this whole Vlad's the reason this person went to prison or whatever. And it ends up always being not true. The person themselves will be like, this isn't true. And, and so you get these types of things every so often. So you just all right, you kind of address them in your own time. Yeah. But that with any conspiracy theory, you addressing them is just more fire to the conspiracy theory. Of course you would deny it because that's what you would do if you're a Fed. So that type of thing.
Crazy.
Well, I guess this next question kind of falls into the last question is because of Vlad TV, what's the biggest public misconception about you, you think?
I think that a lot of people don't understand that sort of like the intrinsic love I have for hip hop and the art form and so forth. I think people really, you know, sort of see the views and see the money and, you know, and see the, you know, some of the drama that's discussed in the interviews, and they think that it's just for that. And it just isn't.
Right. You're giving us all a platform. You gave me a platform to speak and to, you know, talk about everything.
It's a platform. And you know, I've heard that they think I secretly drug my guests, you know, like into telling them, giving them truth serum, or something of the fact.
Apollonia was crying. They gave her truth serum.
Yeah, you know, that I'm somehow secretly recording people or whatever else, whereas like clearly everything we've ever put out, it's professionally shot. You know, there's multiple cameras, multiple microphones. You've never seen sort of like a hidden camera. We've never put out like a, you know, like I've never recorded a phone call that I've had with anyone and then put that out, even though I've had it done to me. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like it's never been our style to do anything but just good business and everything being above board. But you know, people are always going to create their own narratives around it. But you know, we're a very, you know, straightforward company. You know, I have a staff of 14 people. You know, my employees have a great working environment. You know, everyone always gets paid on time. You know, everything is always, you know, you've never heard anyone come forward and bring any sort of like legitimate, like, Vlad did this to me and here's the proof. It's always like, oh, I heard that Vlad is this, or I heard that Vlad is that, but it's never the actual person or any actual kind of thing, because we've always done good business.
Right.
Oh, great.
Okay. Choose one, love or money. Why?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think, I mean, you know, I would say love, because, you know, if you don't have someone that you really love and care for, who really cares for you, having a bunch of money brings a certain level of emptiness to it all.
Damn.
Okay.
You know, and I, you know, and there are times, you know, in my life when I've had a lot of money, but faced with the prospect of losing someone I really care about, you realize that you would pick the person over the money. And you know, and having money is great. You know, I've had a pursuit of money since I was a little kid. You know, we grew up, you know, Massachusetts, we lived in the projects. You know, my family ended up getting a little more stable over the years, but it's not like we were ever rich or well off. So I've always wanted to have money. I've always talked about money. I've always pursued money. But, you know, I think that having a bunch of money and not really having people around you who care about you, and I've had those times in my life where it's like you just have bad people around you who are just there to really just take advantage of you.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, everyone wants friendship. Everyone wants companionship. Everyone wants love. You know, everyone wants friendship that, you know, you are going to seek it in some type of way. And if you don't have people, you know, people in your corner that really care about you, you're going to probably lose whatever you built.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I've made that mistake over the years.
Yeah.
So I would say love over money. And I think that once you have the love, making the money is a lot easier, because you're not always trying to chase the love.
Wow. Gotcha. Brilliant. Damn.
All right.
Wow.
If sex were food for you, what food would it be?
If sex was food,
what would it be?
I don't know. All you can eat buffet. I don't know. Sizzler.
I don't have a lot of time. Love it.
If you could trade places with one person for a day, who would it be and why?
For a day.
Yeah. One day.
Just one day.
Just
one day. One day. This is an interesting one. I think Oprah would be kind of cool. Trading places with Oprah, you know, because we're in somewhat of a similar field, and I think like Oprah's accomplished so much, you know, a lot more than I have, you know, over the years, and really got into like a financial level and really just an influence level and so forth, I think it'd be really cool to sort of just see what it's like to sort of sit at the top of all that and really, you know, figure out kind of how she did it and how she approaches it and so forth. Because that's definitely, you know, one of my heroes.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Last question, and actually this is a statement. If I could do it all over again, I would
do it the same way. You know, it was you appreciate a lot more when you get it out the mud and when you start at the bottom. You know, it's you know, a lot of mistakes, you know, you learn from your mistakes, and you know, the suffering and the hard work and the doubt and the not knowing what the future is, like that's what drives a lot of it. So, you know, you can't really say like, oh, okay, I would skip these steps and I would not make these mistakes and so forth. But then that wouldn't get you to the same place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I would do it the exact same way. And, you know, and I think I've always been fairly good at sort of mapping out the future.
Yeah.
I've always been like, you know, I mean, I remember at 30 years old working at this dead end strip club, really just going like, how did I get here? Like what mistakes have I made in my life to end me up here? Like in this kind of like just crappy environment, you know, knowing that one day I would be great at what I do, but clearly it's not being recognized in this moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, really just kind of going through that and really just sort of pushing through and always looking for the next big thing and figuring out where you're going to go next. And you know, always thinking long-term with it, you know, not making the short-term decisions that will keep you where you are, because the majority of people that I grew up with are pretty much where they always were. Yeah. And that's never been my goal. My goal has always been like, okay, 5 years down the line, this is what we're going to do, 10 years, 20 years, you know, and there's certain things that you avoid along the way to make sure that you get to that point. Yeah. You know, like, you know, Howard Hewitt, you know, when he talked about the apology, he said, you know, 40 years is a lifetime to some people. Some people don't make it to 40. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, some people don't make it to 40. Yep. Every year, people we interview, like young men, end up getting killed, you know, months or years after our interview. And it's just like, you look back on it going like, damn, he was, you know, like Mo 3 was 20 something. Chinks Drugs was 20 something. Yeah. You know, me and Pop Smoke were in talks to do an interview. He was like 21. Like, and you realize that you could do so many things along the way to not make it to old age. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, you know, old age, you know, people complain about being older, but age, you know, getting older in age it's a gift that sure not everyone gets to have.
Amen.
Right about that.
The decisions that you make along the way is what allows you to get to that gift.
Yeah.
And there, you know, and especially decisions where as you get older, you become more and more established and more comfortable, and you don't have to work as hard, and you're kind of sitting back on the work that you've done in the previous decades. Yeah. You know, that takes a lot of planning and thought to get to that point. You don't get there accidentally.
That's right.
And, you know, between, you know, drugs, prison, you know, doing crime, you know, having kids too early, you know, or just living life, you know, paycheck to paycheck, not really thinking what you're going to do, not having a career, not, you know, if college is on your, you know, and like for years I used to think like, you know, if I didn't go to college, I could have started my DJ career earlier and I would have been farther along, only to find out years later with Vlad TV that all my years in college actually paid off in what my real career was going to be, because Vlad TV is as much of a tech company as it is a content company, because so much of the back end is technology that I helped to architect, you know, with a programmer, you know, so it was like all those years of thinking I'd wasted my time actually weren't a waste of time, because when you look at sort of all my peers in the space, no one really has the technical background, so all their companies never really flourished in the same way. So that's really the whole thing of like just thinking about it and planning for it and saying like, okay, like I plan on being 70, 80, 100 years old, and this is what I need to do to get there. And to be comfortable when I get to that point.
That's right.
Because you don't want to be 80 years old sitting in a jail cell.
Right.
You don't want to be 80 years old working at Walmart as a greeter.
Right.
Because your Social Security checks just don't cover your bills.
Right.
If you want to do it just to get out of the house, that's cool. But having to do it, working at McDonald's, at that age, because you have to, and there's a lot of people that have to, because Social Security and the rising cost of living just isn't cutting it, and they have no savings for whatever reason. And I've been dead broke before. I've been homeless, sleeping on friends' couches and so forth. I know what it's like to be at that level, and you don't want to be at that level. It's okay to be at that level in your 20s or maybe even your early 30s as you try to figure things out. But it's not cool to be at that level at your 40s, 50s, 60s, like, where you don't move around as quickly, and, it's harder, and, there's age discrimination and everything else like that. So that's a lot of it for me.
Yeah.
Man, that's an incredible response.
It's great.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Is there anything that's developed since you and I met, since I did your interview, that you want to ask me? Is there any questions, anything that you might?
No, I think I think we went pretty in depth with that interview. I think a lot of people got to get to know you for the first time. I think and I think with my interviews, it's always like I like to give people something that they never knew they needed.
Right.
It's not like 100 people a day were asking for an Apollonia interview. It was like, hey, I think that you guys want to hear this Apollonia interview. and once it comes out, you guys will see what I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of like how, like Steve Jobs, with the iPhone. It's like, you guys didn't know you need an iPhone, but here you go. Now you can't live without it.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So that's really like, I feel like, we got to give the world sort of your story and sort of the Prince story from an angle that they may not have known about.
Right.
And, I think it's, I'm proud of the piece, especially the full interview, the way it came together. I'm proud of the way it kind of came together and how it's going to be sort of a lasting piece of content and art, for the world to see in the future.
Thank you, Vlad, for giving me that platform. I really appreciate it. It was just something else different for me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for coming and gracing our podcast with your knowledge, your wisdom, and just your presence. This has been a great interview. Great afternoon for us.
Thank you. DJ Vlad in the house.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Woo! Thank you. What an honor.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Influencer.
Yes.
Woo!
Yes. And we will see you next time on Apollonia Studio 6. Thank you.
Peace.